one thing that was very clear for me is that if I don't sell as the founder, we're not going to be successful. I know a lot of founders, they're very product driven, they're very service driven, they're very focused on the technology. It's great if you have a founder like that, but selling the product as the founder, not sending a junior sales manager to a company who has to start on the bottom of the food chain, I think was a good way how to do it. Hi, I'm Fabian Gems, and you're listening to GGUTT, GGUTT.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria and welcome to GGUTT Talks, a podcast brought to you by GGUTT, gguttalks.com. I enjoy adding value and helping wherever I can, widening my spectrum of thoughts even if it can sometimes challenge the mainstream. This is why we give data a voice and co-create a collective intelligence involving both people who are not always in the limelight and those who are, in order to learn from each other and spread knowledge, creative and critical thinking. To date, we've had guests from over 35 countries and counting. All I ask is to rate the show, leave a review and share it. It's a fantastic way to help other podcast explorers discover our content. Now let's get started. Fabian Gems is the co-founder and CEO of Supaso, a company that focuses on sustainable and environmentally friendly packaging solutions based out of Austria. I caught him between two meetings in his car just before Christmas to record this episode. Fabian lived and worked in different continents before making the leap and transitioning from being a diplomat to a co-founder. He shares his journey and some key lessons, stories and experiences that can be full of gems to anyone starting or growing a business. From starting up to sales to manufacturing, product development, distribution, growth and more. A big shout out to Marina Baldini for her kind invite to the Advantage Austria pitch event at Deloitte Greenhouse, where I got to meet Fabian. So, here we go. Thank you for that, Fabian, and it's fabulous to see you and see your packaging behind you for those who are watching the video. So we're going to talk about this after. Thank you so much for being on GGUTT Talks, Fabian. I want to mention how we met. We met in Italy at the Advantage startup event at Deloitte's Greenhouse, like literally a random conversation. And I thought your background is quite intriguing. And I thought, why not? Let's invite the guy. First of all, how are you? You're so busy right now, right?
It's Christmas is a time of boxes. And in order for all our customers to get the boxes to their customers in time, we are quite busy at the moment. But the startup landscape right now is anyway a little bit mixed feelings-wise. So we're happy that we are growing quite rapidly. So it's going well. And that's why I'm in the car. I apologize to the audience for having this setup, but not as a beautiful startup setup as you have with the podcast logo in the back and the nice microphone. But I hope we will have a great conversation.
Thanks for liking the background. But I guess the most important thing is what you're going to say and what we're going to discuss. So I think I want to start with something that I've been starting off quite frequently with, is just to see how you function somehow as an individual. So if you travel back in time into, let's say, your upbringing as a kid, as a teenager, how was it like? Because initially you were employed, right? And you had different roles, which we're going to obviously get into. And then you founded your own company.
Actually, a couple of companies. So I come from a quite traditional background. So my parents are both teachers. My father at the higher technical school as well as university. My mother elementary school. So I was brought up more in a hardworking teacher, middle class life. And of course, this in the beginning absolutely brought me where I needed to go. You learn getting up early with the teachers. They have to be in school very early too. And that absolutely formed my first couple of years. But my dad always said, if you don't believe in yourself, who else will? So of course, that also had a big impact on what I intend to do in the world as well in the future. So to make a long story short, it was a more traditional risk-averse upbringing that I was brought up in. Although it's quite interesting because my mother changed careers it feels like 20 times. She also now has her own practice in kinesiology. First she was working in a bank, then she was becoming a teacher. She's now on her third or fourth career. So it's quite interesting that this seeing an opportunity and using it, I've seen, although coming from a more traditional background. There's not really, I mean, my uncle is an entrepreneur, but otherwise it's a very steady employment background, if you may say. Yeah. So
it's an interesting one on your mom actually changing from banker to a teacher. So yeah, that must have triggered something, as you're saying. And I saw when we met, you said it's like, oh, I was a diplomat before, and now I'm doing this. So can you take us through your journey a bit? Because I think
yeah.
it can be, the reason why I want to talk about this is because to some of the listeners, this can be an interesting point, because sometimes it can sound like this is what I studied, or this is the only thing I know, but I have this thing I know I can do or I want to do. And then there's this fear of jumping to do something else.
Yeah.
So maybe your background can help.
The classical golden cage, I would call it, right? But let's start from the beginning. At a very young age, I think I was not even done with high school. I wanted to become a diplomat. So I went into the classical training. I went to law school. Then I did the international master's program on top of that in a couple of countries. I was already living in Thailand, in Canada, in the Netherlands, in Austria, in Switzerland. And then I had two tracks. You can go to the foreign service through the foreign ministry in Austria. You can go through the commercial side. I applied for both, got accepted in both, and then said, okay, commercial side is actually quite interesting. So that's how I became a commercial diplomat, in connecting Austrian companies with foreign countries. I was living in Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, and then in China. So also not, I was not really going for the Paris, New York, London kind of feelings. I really wanted to explore new opportunities and really get connected with something that I'm quite unfamiliar with. And that's one thing that I always enjoyed, trying the unknown. And that might be a nice bridge why I wanted to do packaging. Because I saw an opportunity at the time. I was already done with being a diplomat. I was working as a consultant for my now co-founder's old company. And the contract, well, there were some issues in the whole process. So we said, okay, you don't need me anymore. It's fine. And then in the waning days of that, he brought this idea to me and said, well, I always get these requests from companies and I don't know what to make of it. Can you look into it? So with my background, I could do market analysis, and I saw it's actually quite interesting. So what we do is we replace styrofoam with a paper version of it, which can be curbside recycled in the paper waste stream. So there's no microplastics, there's no problems with incineration, the waste, or landfills, so on and so forth, because paper is actually something that's throughout Europe and in many parts of the world is quite well recycled and upcycled. And then I actually told him I want to do it. And at that time, he still had an engagement with his old company. And he said, I don't have time. And then I said, then I'm going to do it alone. Then he said, then he's going to sue me. And then I said, so we're going to do it together then. And that's actually how we started the company. So I was quite pushy at the time. I saw the opportunity and I had time, given that I didn't have that many engagements in consultancy work at that time. It was also part of COVID, right? So it was not like I had new customers on the daily. I had a lot of Chinese contracts which fell through because I just couldn't get to China. So how should I make it work? And in that standstill, we were able to find something that actually works. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. So I don't know if any of that makes sense, what I now said, but that's how I just want to take the listeners on the journey of how we got to where I am now, sitting in the car between two meetings in one of the busiest times of the year for us. And I was always asked, why do you do it? Like, why do you do it? Why would you build a company from scratch? Why wouldn't you join a growing company? Why do you want to do your own one? And the clear answer to that is, in 10 years, I don't want to look back and think, why didn't I try it at least? And maybe that's to the listener also something where you could be, okay, it is obviously a risk. I was sitting in a golden cage as a diplomat. It's not a guaranteed lifelong contract, but it pretty much is. I mean, you have to be quite horrible at your job to lose that kind of job, because the screening process and the training is quite rigorous. So then, of course, once you're in there, it's hard to throw people out. You have to break the law in order to lose the job, more or less. But I was always like that. I was always looking for the next thing. My wife say I'm restless in that sense. So She's actually quite happy because I come home every night quite tired without any ideas for new things. So this is what the startup life has brought to me.
Okay, so now you brought some mental stability to your wife not coming up with the next thing.
Yes, exactly. Well, maybe not. We will see.
Well, unless
But
you tell her we're moving here again, right?
we're not moving anymore, my wife. I promised that to my wife. We found a nice home on the countryside. We're not moving again. So this is Alison. If you listen to this, I will not move again. Thank you.
So you lived in the ex-Yugoslavia, you were in Belgrade, right?
Belgrade, yeah.
As I read. And then you moved to China,
Yeah.
other than everywhere else you left. But this is where you're pretty much a diplomat, correct? Is that
This
correct?
was where I was serving the Austrian business community as a diplomat.
So what were you doing there? What was your job?
It's a very good question because everybody thinks that as a diplomat in general, you just go from brunch to lunch, from lunch to dinner. You have a nice glass of wine in a 5-star hotel and talk a little bit about life. But actually, Advantage Austria is who I worked for. It's also the ones that were hosting the event in Italy together with Deloitte. And you do a lot of the work that a consultant does as well, but it's part of the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber. So it's a support system for Austrian companies. So they want to have a preliminary market assessment. For example, I'm now talking to one of my good old colleagues on a regular basis. How is the paper recycling going in Cairo, for example? Like, is there in Egypt, is there some movement in the legislation, which would be interesting for us? Or another example is, okay, I've been now in Croatia for the last week, and I was just meeting potential partners that could sell our product. Those connections I got through the commercial service of the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber. You host delegations, obviously, as you saw, like the Deloitte Greenhouse event, where there were startups that were presenting to the wider Milano startup scene. But you also help when there's problems. I remember there were some fraud cases in China or some claims cases where you try to intervene and help the Austrian company get their money back. And that's all together, I would say, what you do. So if you look at a rainbow, you have all different kinds of colors and all different kinds of, not really shapes, but some different variations of the colors. And that's how I describe my work. So if a company needed something and it's legally sound, that's very important. You cannot say, for example, in Serbia, okay, you have to follow the rule of law. And then somebody says, but for me, you have to break the law. No, that doesn't work. But anything but that, I was trying to help Austrian companies with in my work.
Okay, and this is what I read a bit about you, that you're really into also the regulations. So you were doing it for the others and now for yourself as well.
Yes,
How
regulations.
do you follow? How could you keep on top, though, by the way?
How I keep on top? With a lot of coffee and little sleep. No, you build up a network so that the information finds you. If you have to find the information, it's very hard. And it takes a long time. It took me, even before I was a diplomat, I was quite involved. Bless you. Even before I was involved as a diplomat, I was always thinking about networks and how to connect different players in the network. And this proves very beneficial now because, for example, if there's a great startup prize, I get an email from an old friend who says, hey, by the way, I saw this, thought about you. Or if there's a new proposal for the waste packaging and packaging waste proposal on the European level, I also get an email and say, hey, look, we just saw this, thought about you. So I think if you are always running behind the information, you're doing something wrong. At the beginning, you will. But I think there has to be this mindset that you have to build up a support system around you where you give and take. For example, yesterday I talked with a good friend of mine. It was a VC related matter, and then he needed some contacts in this one company, and I know the company very well. So it's a give and take approach. And if you once have this network, which takes a long time and it's hard, especially if you're not an extrovert. I'm luckily an extrovert, but if you're not an extrovert, it's even harder. Then the information at some point will find you. And that's the beauty of this. You push a rock up a hill to just, you push it, but sometimes you're on the peak and then it goes down. And when you get to this phase where you're like just above, that's when it starts making fun. Before, it's hard work. As anything else is in life.
Do you have a story you want to share? Maybe a story you didn't share before. Maybe you shared it, but not quite extensively, on how you kept pushing these buttons to get this network of yours going. Something
Yeah.
that happened either way.
From a standpoint of connecting, I think the most important lesson I've learned, and I've learned that from meeting others at the quite an early stage, I remember, and I've actually never talked about this story. You never have to reinvent the wheel. That's one big thing that everybody thinks, oh, I have to be the first one doing this, doing that. First of all, you're never the first one doing something. There's so many billion people in the world. I'm sure somebody thought of something like this before. And the second thing is that how to build those networks is that you have to actually listen to somebody who has already done it. And I know everybody knows somebody that has this kind of networks where like, oh, wow, how did he do it? And I actually went to those people. So when I started working in Belgrade, I had networks in the Netherlands and in Canada, but I didn't have any networks in Serbia, like at all. Well, a little bit because of my background, because of the International Criminal Tribunal that I was working for. So I understood the mindset. But there I went to my first boss, and he was quite open with me having all those meetings without him as a deputy of the commercial section. And I think that really changed something towards me, where at the end of the day, you ask somebody for help and they give you that free space to operate. I think that's very essential for building up those networks. Because if somebody wants to keep you down and keep you small and be like, oh, you're only the deputy now, it's your first thing, don't you worry about it. And I know there's people like that out there. Then you have to widen your circle, because then this person that is on top of you is not the right person. But for the big part of my career, I had always people that I could look up to, ask for, how do you do this? Be interesting, ask a lot of questions. And I think that's quite important because at the end of the day, you really don't, going back to the stupid expression, but I'm going to say it anyway, you don't have to reinvent anything. And maybe one thing that I learned was, especially then from my second boss within this diplomatic, the first one was great, Andreas, he was awesome, great, you could learn a lot from him. Second one, Erica, was a little bit different, and she actually had this approach. You can make many mistakes, but make more things right than you make mistakes in a day, and you're fine. Which you might not say, well, this doesn't sound very diplomatic. But what this did actually in me was able to explore a little bit more of, besides getting all the great basic work and being able to learn on the fly what it is actually that you do as a commercial diplomat, it allowed me to also make the mistakes that I needed to make in order then to lead my own office in the second term, which is also something which is not very usual. So that I was already the head of the Austrian Consulate General and the head of Advantage Austria Guangzhou, although it was a small office, in the second term was not something that is common, to say the least. Has to do that nobody wants to go to China. It still has this stigma of being so different, and obviously, especially if you have kids or if you have some relatives in Austria that are getting older, of course you don't want to be that far away. But I think talking about how to build up those networks, I think those two people were very instrumental in what I do today. Actually, I see one of them tomorrow at an event. So I'm going to inform him that he's on a podcast now as well.
That's nice. So shout out to both Andreas and Erica, right?
Yes, absolutely. Man, I love those two.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it got some other questions actually triggered in my mind. So the first one is, how did it feel to leave, as you mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, safe job, a almost like guaranteed job, to start something from scratch with no guarantees, even though you felt probably you had the know-how and you were quite sure about the market, but still it's a risk.
It's hard, point blank. So if there's one thing that you have to be very sure about it, otherwise you're crazy. If you just think, oh, you're just gonna, put your little toe into the water to see how the market is, it's not gonna work. So luckily I have a wife, she's American. She comes from an entrepreneurial background. Her father was a successful, or is still a successful businessman, although he now sold one of the companies. And that's something that you have to have as an entrepreneur, is having this family understanding and being on the same page with your partner, because otherwise it's really, really, really difficult. You will run against a lot of closed door, which don't open time, and you're going to have a lot of bumps and bruises, not physical, but emotional and mental. So having that understanding from being able to talk to my father-in-law, how he did it back in the day, and my wife, Alison, understanding that this is the startup phase and this is not going to be the rest of the life, but this is what it is now. And she saw that already 20 years ago when she was growing up, that this is how it goes and this is how it needs to be. I think this is quite important because otherwise, I don't think I would be where I am today without those two. Loving my parents and everything, but of course, they don't really understand why you would leave their background, how they were brought up. My father was the first one to study, and my mother was studying as well after working for the bank as a deputy manager of a bank branch. For them, for me going through all the university and being a diplomat, they thought, okay, he's good, he's settled, everything is going well. So there was quite a lot of tense conversations about that. Why would you do that? Why would you not? Go everywhere, every 3 to 5, 7 years, you're somewhere else, we can visit you, we will support you, blah, 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 blah. But as I said, my motivation was a little bit a different one from a personal challenge. And obviously, it was also what I want to do. I mean, I can do a lot of good things as a diplomat, but the impact I can generate now with this technology that we have, making the world a little bit a better place, leave it a little bit better than we found it, I think was for me too convincing to not do it. Besides all those, let's not say struggles, but besides all those challenges that you face as a startup founder.
Ad break? No, that's not an ad. This podcast is brought to you by GGUTT, GGUTT, which is the platform I launched to augment human capabilities focused on creativity, design, co-creation, and critical thinking. I would love to know more about you and your preferences to continue producing this kind of content. So type in go.gut.com/talks. It takes 60 seconds to complete. That's go.gguttt.com/talks. Now let's get going. So before we jump into what you do at Supaso, I just want to go a bit through. You said this is the second company you start, right? So what was the first one?
So Gem Solutions is just a boutique consultancy where I pick and choose the clients I want to work for, and I do market strategies or some lobbying activities, other things. So this is what I don't have any time at the moment for. So resting a bit, so to speak. It's resting at the moment. But this was a little bit of a bridge between being a diplomat, having all those contacts, and then giving that to companies on a need-by-need basis.
Okay. And you started a podcast. This is something you told me when we met, and then you stopped. So
yes, absolutely. No, this internationalization podcast. I was working as a diplomat already with Austrian government agency. They're called Global Incubator Network. And we did some fantastic programs in southern China. And when I then left and went to Austria, they just asked me, we're starting this podcast. And I'm like, yeah. And they were like, well, we want you to co-host it. I'm like, I have no idea what a podcast is. I mean, I know what a podcast is. I listen to it. But how do you want to do a podcast about internationalization? They presented me a beautiful project overview of how it could be. And now we actually we closed it because my partner in that project, Karina and Lisa as well, they're not part of the program anymore. And we did already all the rounds, but we did more than 70 episodes of the podcast. It's awesome that you do it. I really appreciate it being on here. And I know, and you listeners don't know how much work it actually is to get a good product out there. So just that you appreciate all the content that you get.
I didn't know that either. I thought you just record and let's it,
no, it's not like that. You just don't record. It's not. Put it out. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And again, I tip my hat to you, my imaginary hat to you for doing this, because I think it's really cool. And I love the format of podcasts, right? It's like you can listen on the go. You don't have to listen in one sitting. You go back to the things that you like to hear about. And my wife is a little bit annoyed because the only things that I do nowadays is listening to podcasts. And especially after driving and doing all those things, I do a bit of everything, yeah.
Well, you can give her a choice. It's either you move back or you listen to podcasts.
Exactly. I think she's happy because I'm listening now to podcasts, and back in the day I was listening to basketball, And I think she
Oh,
appreciates
okay.
podcast much more than she appreciates all the blazing sounds of basketball games. So
So I have another thing here. Obviously, you started your company or both your companies, I would assume, but you're not a 20-year-old, right? You have like experience, you
mm,
feel confident, you have contacts, that's important, right? How did you feel? Because you've also helped other entrepreneurs of
mhm.
different ages. And I've seen this at Advantage Austria when I was in Milan, like when we met. So you have all sorts of ages. And they say the typical average age of a successful entrepreneur is about like 45, more or less 40, right? I'm not asking about age or anything. It's just to see that you're not at 20 years old, just
I
drop
still,
out, you
still
know.
have time.
This
I
is
still have time. I still have time to be successful. That's good. Okay.
No, so the question is, how did you feel the response from potential partners? Or I don't know if you've raised any money just yet. And opening doors, all of that. Was the response like different to you based on what you've seen also with other founders who would come to you?
Yeah, first of all, if you have, I can tell you now 50 names that I talked about the company before we even started production or doing other things. Obviously, this is a network which is invaluable. If I have a topic about this or I have a text question or this, it's one phone call, direct line to the CEO of this company, and I get the straight answer, not a yes, maybe answer. So obviously, one of my good friends as well, Christian, is also our tax advisor. He said, Fabian, if you're not able to sell that product with your network, you're pretty stupid. so,
Okay.
so was it easy because of that? It was not easy. Was it easier? Of course it was easier, because if I talk to a befriended company owner in Vorarlberg who I helped in China, who knows me very well, and I come to him and talk to him about the idea. And I think that's a very important thing that every founder needs to do more. Talk about your ideas, talk about it through.
Mhm.
Not that you already have a set picture of what that product's going to be like or service going to be like, but be open to listen to the people that have done it before you. So I went to Vorarlberg, I went to Germany, I went to Liechtenstein, I went to Slovenia, I went there, talked to as many people as possible about what we want to do. And then it actually materialized as well that we were able to refine our product on the fly because of some feedback that we got from some potential, not even customers, but somebody who just knows business. And this is for me something that I say, okay, is quite good. So I don't want to clap for myself or put the hand on my, well done. It's just an evolution where we started to where we're now. And if you have the vision and are able to see a couple of years ahead, and you know where you need to go, and you have the ability to talk to potential customers and all that, I think one thing that was very clear for me is that if I don't sell as the founder, we're not going to be successful. I know a lot of founders, they're very product driven, they're very service driven, they're very focused on the technology. It's great if you have a founder like that, but selling the product as the founder, not sending a junior sales manager to a company who has to start on the bottom of the food chain, I think was a good way how to do it. And I think especially B2B sales is hard. It's hard. You have so many meetings, you have so many calls, you have so many miles you drive just for a 5-minute meeting where like, oh, well, that didn't go well at all. I still have that today. Like some meetings, I'm like, well, that wasn't worth the drive, but you learn from it. And I think that's one very important tip to any. I mean, okay, there's different forms of sales. I understand if you're in online marketing and so on and so forth, but we have a product that needs to be explained. And a product that needs to be explained and is physical, needs to be touched. And the product that needs to be touched, that is physical, you have to explain it in person. So I understand all the online marketing and the hacks for growth and all that kind of things, but it doesn't work with our product. It will work for parts of our product, which we're working on right now. But in general, you have to really understand how your product can be put in the right hands of the right people to get good growth.
Yeah, I think you're touching on a very important point here, actually.
So that's full circle back to what you said about, is it different for younger people or is it more difficult for younger people? I don't think it's more difficult for younger people because they need less sleep. I hope at least than me. I have two little kids, so I know a little something about the sleep. I was playing from midnight to 2 with my little one last night, so who's now a little bit older than a year old. But they have to understand that sales is hard, especially B2B sales is hard. And maybe why was it easier for me as well? Is that I have the network and I have the financial ability to focus on this project. So if you don't have that and you do 20 projects on the side while you start your business, you're not going to be successful. And one thing that I always say, because first you said I should say something which I've never said, but one of my mantras is that everything always takes longer than you think. So when it comes to financial planning, when it comes to operation, when it comes to production, everything always takes longer than you think. So what that means for me as a person is that I have to be now aware that we're not going to make the big jumps now of I can pay myself 100,000 euro salary right now, and having the financial means to still have a family, to still support my family together with my partner, to make sure that we have time to launch this product in the right way. The last thing is, yes, we had a lot of interest from investors. We just had another introduction call last night. But at the end of the day, we want to grow sustainably. We're absolutely against hypergrowth because hypergrowth is bad for, I think at least, it's bad for the culture of a company. You can get lucky, but we want to grow sustainably from a staff personnel. We want to be the next 5 to 10 years. So we, until now, are bootstrapped, which is even a harder thing because a lot of people at the beginning, and that's maybe also one story I never told on a podcast, is that VCs came to us. They wanted to invest, and we said, no, we're good. We invest our own money because they were only talking about exits. And we're like, no, guys, our name is Supaso, Sustainable Packaging Solutions. We want to grow sustainably. We want to operate sustainably. We are not interested in a quick growth and then a high return for you on your investment just for money. That's not what we stand for. I think also something that you have to be aware about, which direction do you want to go with your company? And back in the day, everybody said we're crazy. Like I had VCs, principals talking to me like, why are you so stupid and invest your own money? The money is on the market. Why don't you get it from the market? Like do something else, invest it in something else. And what I would say to them is, this is our company. This is like creating something from nothing. And just for the returns of your VC fund, I'm not willing to sacrifice our values. I don't say that we're 100% to all the values that we uphold in all divisions. We're not yet there, but we're trying our damn best to get there.
So many interesting points. Actually, I want to pick up on the first one is you mentioned about your idea, and that's key because not talking about it might just be the end of it really sometimes, because some founders are very scared of sharing and talking about their ideas. But it's like, if anyone can go and do it tomorrow, then it's useless anyway. An idea is just an idea and it's meaningless anyway in any case, because anyone can take it in a different direction. But this is with those who are less exposed probably. So there's always a learning curve to say, talk about it unless they see it. The other point you mentioned, selling as a founder. And this is huge because often you also have the CEO who wants to do everything but not selling. Everyone needs to be like, if the founder is not able to sell, then no one can sell. Because as founders, if they're unable to sell, it means that either they don't believe in the product or they're not confident and they expect others to sell for them. It's not going to happen. I don't know if you can enhance or highlight even more why this is important.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, I have a great sales manual, right? We worked really hard on that. It took me weeks and weeks and weeks to do it. What I understood then is, man, I know all those things about the product. Yeah, of course I know all the things about the product. Together with Georg, we developed the production line. I know all the kinks. I know what it can do and what it cannot do. I know all the customers that we have. I know all the use cases. And you have to live that passion. I think that's quite important. And that's one thing I just discussed with some of our production guys last night. It's like, I don't expect anything from you that I don't do myself. I don't expect anything from you that I don't do myself. We had a huge customer order coming in where we had to shift to 3 shifts, 24 hour. I did for a week and a half, the night shifts while doing work during the day, went to bed for half an hour, did the night shift for 10 hours. So I think that's one thing that, I mean, okay, there's always this expression, work smarter, not harder. But in the end of the day, nothing comes from nothing. So if you're not willing to sacrifice, to put together when it's needed, and to live this kind of company culture that says, hey, guys, I know it's tough. I know it's shitty. We have to do night shifts now. We didn't want to. We told you we didn't want to, but the second machine is not there yet. But they themselves seeing me coming after sleeping for half an hour, doing work during the day with sales, coming home, sleep for half an hour, get a Red Bull, drive to the production, talk to the production guys, help them a little bit, and then start my night shift at 10. And then when they come in the morning, I still stay for another 2 hours to discuss with them a couple of things. I think that's something you have to be. I mean, I don't want to be an Elon Musk. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be sleeping in the production floors and making everybody crazy. But one thing that I absolutely believe in is leading by example. So you can have all the company values written beautifully on the walls, but when they look at you and don't see them, that's it. And especially in the time where we're now, and I have a great team, bringing them on different levels, helping them to get out of their comfort zone. If I'm just going to say, hey, you have to do this, and I'm not coming with them, I don't show them, I don't teach them, I don't live it, then it's quite hard. And that goes back to the selling as well. Do I want to be gone so many times? Do I want to not sit now in the office and have a nice conversation with you? I would love to have my microphone that I have from my podcast days and all that. What it needs right now is what it needs right now. And I hope at some point I have a sales team that is much better than me, because I'm sure I'm not the best sales guy. Sure not. No owner is. I don't know. I know a couple, but a handful maybe. There's a handful of owners I know they're the best sales guys that I've ever met. The rest see the bigger picture, because a sales guy only has to worry about sales. I have to worry about, okay, do we have enough supply? How is the team doing? Is everybody in stock? And so on and so forth. So one day we will go there, but at the moment, and especially in the beginning, if you really want to set an example, you have to sell your product. If you cannot do that, I don't think why you would. If you then think just because you're not bootstrapped that you can just hire like an expensive sales guy.
No. No chance.
That wouldn't work either, because we have partners and we see how difficult it is for them to sell. Not because they're not good at it, but because they're not me. If I go into a meeting and I talk about our story, I talk about our values, I talk about where we want to go, they have their owner in front of them. Otherwise, you know how it is with sales guys or sales women. They show up every day at your doorstep, mostly uninvited. So having this different kind of feel for the game is substantial. But that's one thing that I want to add as well. Like, one of our biggest partners right now, a fulfillment center in Germany. Love the guys, doing an outstanding work for a lot of companies. I didn't tell them I was coming. When we first started, I had a couple of samples which we made on our then not yet ready production machine. Mm-hmm. And I jumped into the car and I drove to them for 5 hours, because I know they would be a big client. And then it turned out to be a 4-hour conversation, because they realized, hey, this guy is crazy, but he's just here now. They canceled all the other meetings and we just sat there talking for 3-4 hours about where we want to go, what we want to do, where they're going. And I know I use it selectively, but having been a diplomat, of course, is always a good conversation starter, because many people can say, oh, as an owner, they have sat down with a diplomat who came to their doors to ask them for what they think about the product. So I always used it as an asset, not so much as I'm a diplomat, you have to believe me, but more like telling interesting stories from back in the day, because of course they're interested how life is, because it's quite a small number of people in the German-speaking world where you can say, okay, they have done those kind of things.
I mean, what you're saying is extremely interesting and powerful, actually, because it goes back to the fact that people do business with people they like and they trust, right? And having your story as an icebreaker is bringing you as a person there, because they're not going to do business with someone they don't enjoy.
Yep.
And like canceling all the meetings to spend 4 hours with you after you driving 5 hours shows like a big commitment, and they probably appreciated it. The thing is, I think I'm just throwing that in the space you're in at the moment, its packaging is like
People are more hands-on. They want to see it, touch it, move. And I'm not saying they're easily accessible, but for example, if you want to go to a company where you really need to go through an email chain of people, how would you approach them?
Somebody who doesn't want to meet me?
Yeah, like no one's
Yeah,
answering.
yeah.
You're unable to get a contact, and you can't just turn up at their door because their security, whatever, you won't be able to go in.
I mean, I've even come through securities as well. I can tell you.
Okay.
You just have to know who, for example, I did this a couple of times. You have to know who the CEO is, and you have to walk in with the confidence that you have a meeting. So I've seen things in my life. I'm not too really worried about walking into a room where nobody expects me or where nobody wants me. I mean, we had some cases during my time as a diplomat where nobody wanted to see me because it was like a fraud case or something else where I needed to help and so on and so forth. So I'm quite comfortable with the uncomfortable, which is also something which I think every entrepreneur should have. But talking about, there's tricks to get it. What we did, for example, is we ordered from customers who didn't want to talk to us. We ordered the food. We did a food review for them. We did a personalized packaging with a handwritten note on it, and then my phone number, and said, hey, it would be great to talk. I think our values match. Love your food. Let's have a talk. And in 80% of the cases, I get a feedback. So you have to a little bit, I mean, it's a pun. It's a wordplay. You have to think outside the box. It's a very bad play words for packaging, but that's what we do as well. For example, you can call it guerrilla marketing or whatever, where, you know, a little bit something more than somebody else would do. So we actually got their packaging. We tested their food. We wrote about the food so they know that we actually ate it. We ate it as a team. And then we make like a nice note with my hand signature on it and my phone number. We're like, hey, it would be cool to catch up. I know you guys are busy, but I think we have a great product and we just want to talk. Take away this level of fear that once they talk to us, we're never going to go away. To be quite honest, I'm not pushing anybody to use our product. And what I hate in my own inbox is now that with this, all those different databases that have my email, and you get 3 emails a week. Like, did you get my email? Did you get my email? And you're like, well, a bot wrote this email and it's sending it out, so I'm not going to reply to it. So I think the thing is for you, if you cannot get into that sphere, you have to understand what drives them and what sets you apart in a personal note that would replace you showing up at the door. For example, if you get a perfectly nice packaging in the cardboard, which they already use, which is custom fit to their products, with a note on it that says, hey, wouldn't it be great if we talked? Look, we are doing this, already working with these and these clients when we are allowed to talk about it. And then you spike some interest, I would say. And that's how we approach it. It's case by case. It's not, what I don't like is flooding all of our emails. I can tell that all of our emails, all of our contacts, all of our phone calls, everything is hand selected. We don't go wide. So you have to understand also what your customer base is and how they approach things.
So you do that where you are, but if you're expanding in other geographies, you're finding partners, right, who would take your product overseas. You're not flying everywhere. Like you mentioned Cairo now. Would you go knocking on doors?
No. I do sales in 9 countries. So actually I'm quite active. Hopefully Italy will be number 10. We are still a regional product. So we have a limitation in geographic. You cannot send our product, which is anyway a proof of concept, because in the long run, we want to get the machines to customers. But you cannot just say, okay, I have now a great customer in Chile and buy a container of our goods. It's the value of the goods is not comparison to the transportation costs.
Yeah.
So what I talked about before with Georg, a former colleague of mine, you just get a feeling for the market. And that's what's also very important, I think, to founders is that look also somewhere else where you don't expect to get immediate results, because you might get an innovation or some aspirations that go somewhere that might be useful. Of course, you have to make money. Of course, you have to sell products. Where's your low-hanging fruit? But then again, where's your vision and where do you want to go? And look somewhere where it's a little bit unfamiliar and see how it's done. because I'm a curious person. I want to know how it works in Chile. I want to know how it works in Brazil. I want to know how it works in Korea. How is recycling done? How is the chain logistics being done, and so on and so forth. So although I'm not going to sell tomorrow a product to Korea because they need a machine, it still gives me some input. And talking to those marketing experts and market experts gives me a little bit of an advantage when it comes to that.
And all this research you do will probably help you take your business model to the next level, find new opportunities. You're doing that along the way. I guess you said also something important that I just wanted to make sure we pick on it, because you said you did like all-nighters where you slept 30 minutes and you were like working all day. It's not just leading by example, but it's also customers are not going to wait forever. If they're expecting something now, then they want it now.
Exactly. No, this is a very good point that you mentioned here. And if I just may put a little something to it, especially packaging is all about availability. They have a project now. They need something now. And all of our customers can always expect me, and I always tell them, hey, if I have to do a weekend shift, I'm going to do a weekend shift. If I have to do it myself, I will do it, but you don't have to wait. And it's great that you highlighted it. If you think that customers don't have any other options, you're a big fool. You're a big fool. There's at least 50 other companies in Europe that can do okay-ish. Of course, I think ours is the best, and I know it's the best. But there's at least 30, 40, 50 companies that do some kind of bio-based insulation cardboard boxes. They don't have our technology, they don't have our production process, but they're there. And for me to believe, okay, I can now put them on the back order and be like, okay, you're going to get it when you get it. It doesn't work. And I don't think there's many products in the world. There is some. For example, there's an Austrian company. They're experts in railway construction machinery, and they're the world leaders. And if somebody has to be built, they're involved. But unless you're that company, don't believe that you're not replaceable. So that's a little bit something that I've seen as well in the world, especially living in China, the fast-paced life that is there, which I absolutely loved, which was instrumental to me developing this entrepreneurial spirit and itch that I had. But just be aware, there is 7 billion people besides you, and there's quite a lot of smart people that want to get things done. So don't be too foolish. And that's also maybe one more point which I want to highlight is the principle of jabudo, which means it's okay, it suffices, it's all right. Like a Chinese saying where it's like, it's okay, it's good enough. And that's with what they go on the market. And that's how we approached it as well. The first 5,000 pieces we made by hand. We didn't have a machine, but we had customers and we were testing the market. Man, there was a lot of work to do those 5,000. But if you don't do it, somebody else will. And don't only think the competition comes from Germany, Austria, Switzerland. There's quite a lot of competition around the world globally, which when we come back to bootstrap, is something that, and I want to be open about this, we discuss quite a bit because there's something that money gives you that you can have an advantage in the medium run. Of course, bootstrap means not hiring 10 people for new projects. It's like, okay, growing, being able to afford new people, and then putting them in place. So people also have to be aware what product or what service they want to bring on the market and what is the best way to get it on the market. Because sometimes you have to be VC funded, otherwise you don't have a chance.
Yeah.
I see in the food space, for example, if you don't have the ability to work with big cooperation partners in the food space, and you don't have the speed and you don't have the financial means to, getting paid months after you actually put the product on the shelf, it's difficult.
It's something I wanted to ask you about, actually. In your case, you produce 5,000 pieces manually. In some cases, you have other kind of, let's say, hardware products, chips, whatever, that you have to order from different parts of the world, and you have software. So software is one thing also, but then you have software and hardware, for example. And you said some need to be VC funded, otherwise it's not possible. But these, in this case, they can't always be as fast. So what's your take on that? Did you take pre-orders, for example, in your case?
We had agreements with partners is when we are done with the production line, they will hire entire truckloads. So this is kind of a sidestep of a pre-order because obviously we had the financial means to go until then. But
and
if you
they
don't,
paid you for
They paid us after, but it gave us the confidence that if we do the product in that quality, which they already saw we can do kind of half manually, half automated, that they're happy enough with it that they will take entire truckloads. And that made our motivation and go further and further, further. And from then on, the first truckload was crazy to produce. We had a machine, which was a prototype machine, which is not the serial production. So everything is like kind of not what you think it might be. So there's also some wear and tear that you don't know, because you can make 5 boxes, but 5 inlays, but you don't know how it reacts if you make 5,000 with it. How this material, how is this going? How is the scale working? How is this doing? When you increase the speed, when is that doing? But in the end of the day, as I said, always everything takes longer than you expect. We were running in some problems with some engineering partners of ours who were not developing it as to the level that we wanted to. And that's in the end was something that you always have to calculate in. And don't be foolish to believe that your own business plan and the numbers are actually lining up to real life. You write business plans for different purposes. Sometimes you don't want to have too much on it. Sometimes you want to have a lot on it because it's shown to a different partner. But it would be nice if you always have this hockey stick and you're like, okay, this is how it works. But life is not shaped and is not a hockey stick. So that's why I like more the image of pushing a rock up the hill and then it's coming down again, because for me that's more realistic than the other way. You have to push, and then you have to even hold it back sometimes, because you're like, okay, we had one order which I'm happy we never got, but we made an offer. It would have been not good for a company. It would have been great for our sales, but it would have not been good for a company because we weren't ready yet. And that's also something that you have to take into account. Sometimes, I know I use a lot of phrases, but slow and steady wins the race is sometimes not the worst thing, especially when you go into, and that's what we always believed in, the service is what people want. For example, we just recently had a customer in Germany. It's like, hey, I'm starting my web shop. Do you have something? And I ask him, well, what product do you want to send? And he's like, okay, I'm going to send those pies, like Australian pies. And I was like, okay, time is running out. How about we know how testing can be done? How about we send already a package up to you and have it picked up so the next day comes to us, and we already do a full-fledged temperature test with your products. All you have to do is you put the products inside, the rest we will do, and we'll send you the results afterwards. So that's how we generally want to get clients that could, packaging you can buy online. If you now Google thermal packaging, e-commerce, you will have hundreds of options. And that's how we differentiate ourselves with the service. And that's service that actually costs you, but it also gives you a lot of feedback what the market needs. It breaks the barrier of testing your product, because that's also something. If you bring a new product to the market, how do you break this barrier of somebody who says, well, I'm not sure. This product worked for 50 years. Why would I not use it again? And that's where you have to think about, okay, how can you lower those barriers of getting test customers? And that's also something which we did with making it an experience to test our product. And that's something that our competition is not doing. And I say hello to them when they're listening to the podcast, because I know they're following our LinkedIn quite frequently.
That's a point here where you're saying you're making it an experience to test your products.
Yeah.
Are you somehow integrating your products or in their workflows not to disrupt it, or you are disrupting their workflows and making a new experience?
We're not really disrupting the workflows, but the testing process can be a very long process. So sometimes we have customers who come back, oh, now we had time to test it, it's a good product, 6 months later. But sometimes we have, for example, now we also have a new Swiss customer, and he said, we start sending out samples of our new food product in December. We need a solution now. How do you do it? How do you shorten this circle of getting a customer right now? Sometimes when you don't have capacities, which we sometimes do, we put it on the slow side. But for example, with the German, a new customer that we have, it was different. It's like, okay, I need something by, what did he say? By October. And it was beginning of September. Like, okay, we know that usually for somebody to test our product, and the sales cycle would be roughly 6 to 8 weeks. So how can we make him confident to buy from us and not a standard product within a week, because then he has to order, because then we have to start production in order to have it up there when we have a 3-week production wait, when the orders are already in for 3 weeks. And that's what we try to do. Again, saying hi to the competition. If you haven't got the customer, it's because we just did more service to them. And it's a lot. We have those live trackers that we work with where we can send to a customer, hey, it's now on the way for 48 hours. Look at this link. Look how it's going. And that's a live test in middle of summer. And that's the kind of confidence that you have to give your customer in order to choose you. Going the extra mile, doing the extra service, and showing them something that they haven't seen before. Is this scalable? Doing it with every customer? Of course not. We know that. I mean, we have dozens of samples which go out every day. Dozens. Can I put in all of them live trackers and do those test runs already? No. I exactly also know, for example, we are very strong in the food for dog market. So fresh cooked meals for dogs, which are then frozen. We have a lot of clients there all over Europe. There I just have to say, hey, by the way, they also use it. That's enough. If it's a big competitor, they're going to be like, oh, if he already has it, I have it too. So this is something that you have to keep in mind as well. How can you differentiate yourself, and how can you lower those barriers of being used in that sense?
I like what you're saying here, because actually, even though you can't have a live tracker, you're building so many case studies anyway that you can share, because some ask and require case studies in order to purchase.
Yeah.
So that's a cool way of doing it, actually.
Well, and then just to build on that, then my competition will, again, listen very careful. But we do those tests, we do for every new product. And we do live tests. We have a lab, we have a climate chamber, but we love to do those tests live because we want to see how it works in real life, not in lab conditions. And that's something that I even talked to one of our friendly competitors. As they asked me, how do you do it? I was like, make it an experience. Like if that's an important customer, I have another call in a couple of hours with a potential big customer, and I'm going to tell him, hey, because we're discussing right now the price. My thing is always, of course, I can do it for you for this price, but it's not going to work. So I can make it, because we can make the inlays thinner. We can make it different things. We know which product works for which market, and we know which product works for which sector, and we know which product works for which time of the year. So there as well, my approach will be, and I'm not going to say which sector it is and which day it is today. Just kidding. So they don't know that I'm talking about them. But my approach will then be, hey, let's develop something together. This price we cannot do because it's not going to work. But how about we see what you need, we do some testing, and then we see where we end up. Because at the end of the day, one thing that you can never do, and I wrote this yesterday to them, I cannot sell a product which doesn't make money. I'm not a hypergrowth company where I subsidize every sale with the amount of cash I have in the bank. So if you want our product, we can work on it together. We can do a little project and then make it work. We set the parameters, and I'm happy to invest in that relationship. But I'm not going to sell my product, which is worth 3 for 2, because I cannot subsidize this one. It doesn't work. And that's, I think, also something that you have to learn. Somebody actually told me that, when was that? Just a couple of days ago. I listened to a podcast as well, and it was, I don't know who it was. Oh yeah, it was NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, so for the Basketball Association, talking about with a former player who has also now a podcast. And he said the second best answer is always no. If you don't have the answer, say no. Because the power of no, I think, is also something that was explored quite a lot in discussions and also in negotiation techniques. But you have to stake the line. At the beginning, I was also a little bit, okay, we can make it work like this. It doesn't work. We can do this or we can do that, but we cannot do both. And I think that's also something that founders need to understand and learn. This is something that you don't have to do every sale. You don't. It's a huge customer. We will make probably 200,000 euros turnover with him next year. What is the 200,000 euros if I make 70,000 euros lost on it? Cannot do it. And I'm a people pleaser, so for me, that's even extra hard. From a nature as an extrovert, you want to make everybody happy, but you cannot make everybody happy all the time.
No, you can. And I think this gives confidence to potential investors, if you want to have any at some point, that it's everything you said before, like you're sticking to your values and how you want to grow and what you stand for as a company and as a brand and why you're doing what you're doing. But at the
Yeah.
same time, you want profit. But at this point, revenue and profit, but but not just like you're not a charity in that sense.
Not a charity, and I think that's a good point that you raise, is because for us, one understanding of sustainability is financial sustainability, especially building those machine as a service models later on. If we cannot even run our own production financially sound, why would somebody else take our machine? I mean,
Mhm.
I would say it's the most expensive proof of concept I've ever heard in my life. But we're investing now 7 figures into the new production. But at the end of the day, we believe in a product and we know it works. But for it to work, we also need to understand the product, the price, the market demands, of course. We're going to come out with some cheaper products as well, which we just want to put into the e-commerce streams and still doing a sustainably sound product, but for a different niche. And I think that's also something that you have to be aware about. And it's very hard. Like, you could do just one box size and you just focus on that. Or you make all different kinds of boxes, but where do you stop? We say we can do all kinds of sizes. Why do we say that we can do all kinds of sizes? It's quite easy. It's a proof of concept. So if we later have somebody who's only needing caviar packaging because those are those little tins, then I want to have a use case for them. Like, of course, come on, you can take our machine. You need 200,000 boxes anyway every year. Come on, it's much cheaper. We will make it run for you. And that's also a little bit of a different understanding where you want to go and where your vision lies. Because if you're just a producer, if you're just, okay, I want to have one production, then I want to have another production, it's nice. But if you want to actually do what we want to do in the long run, this machine as a service model, allowing production facilities, cardboard producers to recycle, upcycle their own waste streams into something valuable, we have to be able to show for something. And that's where we want to go in the long run. And that's damn hard, going back to damn hard, because it will be, I know which product we make the most profit with. I know it. We could just produce that. I could just push that. I could just say, okay, that's the product which we have. Do or die. But it's not beneficial for us in the long run. So it's a little bit also of money now, money later kind of scenario. Anybody who thinks they can run a charity and don't think about the financial consequences, I think, is great. If you want to do a charity, it's great. But a startup per se should not be a charity.
No, it's how long can you delay revenue coming in? Because sometimes you can, but then you need indefinite amount of funding. And at some point, you're going to get stuck and struggle. So at what point you have to start like saying, no, enough is enough. Or it's how you start as well. Because again, each team is different, or founders, if you want, but each also product's different. The market changes every day, especially if you rely on different parties, different people in different areas. So all this plays a role. I mean, the prime example is COVID. It just like the logistics alone hit many. So it's tough, and having a plan A, plan B, plan C in place. Not a plan, but at least a strategy for each. It's hard to have a plan, like an exact plan in that sense. But what you're saying is interesting here. You spoke about the experience, and for me, I'm like all in customer experience. For me, I say that it's like it's the ultimate competitive advantage, literally, because you can find anything you want anywhere. It's like what makes it tick for you. And you want to work with this. The company, my background is in design, customer experience. I also had some interesting interviews on the podcast, but you also mentioned the way you want to scale, and you don't want to do hyper growth in that sense. I know scaling is not growth, but I had also a couple of episodes with Patrick Flessner, who wrote Fast Scaling. And you have another episode with Jeff Abbott, who's part of the Blitzscaling Academy. So it's completely it's Reid Hoffman's book, but it's like two completely contradicting ways of doing things.
Yeah, it is. Everybody has to do what's right for them. I have
exactly.
a very successful entrepreneur friend who is like, you need to get money and you have to grow because you want to make the largest impact that you can. And it's better to have 6% of a 300 million turnover market than, but it's not us. We discussed it. It's not what we stand for. it doesn't align with the quality of work which we still need to do, the research and the development of the machine which we still need to do. Okay, I can buy now. Okay, I get 10 million in, I buy 20 machines and have them run. But where do we go? And what does it bring to us? And is it aligned with what we need as a vision? And I think this is something which we discuss internally in the founders team quite often is no, we agreed. Yes, we're talking to investors. Yes, we will need some money at some point. We want to be able to stand on our own feet. And from that perspective, we still need to work with, of course, we need to work on ourselves. And, sometimes I'm like, we're too slow. And then one of my co-founders is like, we're too slow. But going back to slow and steady wins the race, we're building a brand of sustainable packaging that is based on quality, not on the quantity. And what we're doing now, and that's maybe also a tip to whoever wants to be successful in a lot of countries, is I always call them the lighthouse customers. So there's those lighthouse customers that are so well known on markets that others will find you too. And even if you're not present in that market, because you asked me before, do you then fly to all the different countries and knock at doors? That's a little bit of approach that I developed, especially in some markets where they are present in the media and they also recommend us. So we actually have a sales partnership with a customer who says, hey, by the way, you wanted to buy with them? Talk to them, it's better. And that's where you want to go. You want to go that customers say, by the way, yeah, I know they do a product. We tasted them as well, but don't worry. Just take them. We just had the Swiss client who would have bought a competitor's product, but then talked to one of the co-founders. The co-founder said, oh no, they're great. Like, oh yeah, we had them before, but they're better. Now we sealed the deal. And that's, I think, also something that you never underestimate how big or small a customer is. It's more like what, especially in the beginning, what impact can they bring to you? And that's something what I truly believe in. I don't care if it's a small farmer. It sounds like a fairy tale, but I don't care if it's a small farmer with a great product here in Styria, or if it's a large corporation, or if it's a pharmaceutical giant. For me, I look at the bigger picture and be like, okay, what impact can they make also for us, not only as a good customer base, but what impact can they bring? How well settled and arranged are they within their communities? Because I had one customer, and unfortunately they have to close the doors by the end of the year, but they, just by them using us, they brought us 4 other clients. Always going to be forever grateful to them. But just because the others saw them using our products, they got like, oh, there's a new market player. Oh, he's using the new packaging. Oh, we have to talk to them too. And you know how it goes. I don't know if this is useful for the listener, but don't just look at the sheer size of a customer. Look on the impact they can have for you as a lighthouse customer. And that's also something that we truly believe in our sales strategy.
Yeah, that's great, actually, because some don't want to also say that they work, but it's something visible, actually. So those who receive are like they can get away with it. I really, to be honest, enjoyed this conversation, because I did not want to jump straight into what exactly are you doing, but having those, if you want, lessons and experiences in launching a brand, getting started. Because one thing I want to say here, it's like, not every startup has to raise money from investors. You can do it differently. And like, you're a prime example in this. At some point, yes, you're saying, so you're not closing the door completely, but it doesn't come like by default with, I want to start a company. And this is sometimes dismissed. So I'm glad we spoke about this and you mentioned it. Even though many say don't put your own money. Yes, but you probably know what you're doing and you're not injecting money just forever. And you're generating revenue already. So that makes a difference.
But it's a very good point from your side. What I don't want to say it, but because it's, I don't want it to come across as offensive to some startups. But we never wanted to be called a startup. We wanted to be called a family company, like a family business. If you look at a lot of the German companies that became market leaders in their regard, they started as family business with values. And the word startup is not always associated with positive thoughts. It's like, oh, startup crash, blah, 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 startup bubble. That's a little bit of our mindset as well, that we're a family first. Of course, we're a young company. When you think about it, about a lot of the successful stories over the last 100 years of companies and what they've achieved from, from small shops to market leaders in the world, a lot of them still family owned. There is a second way, and everybody has to choose for themselves what's the right way. I'm not saying that I don't know yet. If you don't question yourself, you're not doing something right. We discussed this internally quite a bit. And at the end of the day, you just have to do what you think is best for you. Not because everybody's now raising crazy money, which everybody did back in the day. We didn't. We had offers. We could have gotten 10, 50 million euros in investment. Maybe today I would think differently if we had done that, but we decided not to do it. And there's no one formula. And that's what I always had a little bit of an issue with, also with my friend who said, you have to go big, you have to go fast, you have to do that. And our approach was always, we have to walk before we can run. And that has to do with the confidence that people need to have in our product. That doesn't mean that we don't go out in a product when it's not 100% machine produced. This comes to the next step when it goes to growth and machine development. Yeah.
You have lots of customizations, as you were saying. So what you said is actually, as I was mentioning, I always say not every new business is a startup anyway. But then I remember that you went through Advantage Austria, and it was a startup kind of event because I didn't know how to label it, to be honest. And I said, as a startup, so it's a good point.
It's good that you say it. I mean, of course, why do we get a lot of news? Why do we get a lot of support? Because we label ourselves as a startup. So I don't want to, what I said before is not, I don't want to offend anybody because, but you won the startup competition here and if you're not a startup, why are you in these competitions? If we said we're a team of 12 people, we want to change the world, and we don't use the word startup in it, we wouldn't get the same media attention. We know that. And we are very grateful for being able to use this opportunity.
And I just want to jump in the last bit on what you guys are doing exactly, because I think we need to talk about this, more of a pitch kind of thing, what it is about. But you just mentioned the part about growing fast and going back to hypergrowth and having lots of investors coming in, pouring in money to grow. The trend kind of reversed this year in the investment world. You probably know, right? It's investors want to see actually revenue generating companies rather than investing in ideals and utopia. Yeah. So what you said is on point and is probably what's happening. But I want to know a few things about, can you explain what is the insulating packaging? What are the benefits? Are your competitors just basic cardboards? Are these your competitors? Who are they? Because you have the big competitive landscape in general. And again, what is it that attracted you to this in the first place yourself?
Yeah, I have another bad joke about this. We want to bring sexy pack. So sexy pack. It was a really bad joke. What attracted us? Well, we wanted to do something different. We saw that the styrofoam that you have on the market is just not, they say it can be recycled, but come on. We have seen all the scientific evidence. It's incinerated, or if it's good, it's in landfills. If it's bad, it's in the oceans. And we just wanted to have something that can do all that what styrofoam can, and we can do about 99.5% of what styrofoam can do, whilst being environmentally sound. So we want to have a price point which is okay. We wanted to have not only a price point which is comparable to styrofoam, but we also wanted to have the performance. So we want to have, if you send around fish in the world, if you send around goods in the world, you have to have trust in us that it works as well as styrofoam. Then we wanted to have something which is quite adaptable. So if you need multiple climate zones in one box, we wanted to be able to do that as well. And something that from little caviar, and I know this is now a startup and entrepreneurship podcast, I'm talking about caviar, but it's a great example because it's just a small tin of can, right? And then we do all sizes up to, and I apologize to all the vegans again, for entire lambs, right? So entire lamb, dead, not alive, with 1.20 m, 40, or packaging for even fridges and other things that traditionally were sent with styrofoam. That's where we want to enter. So having the good qualities of styrofoam when it comes to performance and price, but make it environmentally sound and adaptable in the same place. And that's what differentiates us and our system from what is on the market currently.
Okay. And do you own the IP of this? Like, did
We
you
know
create
that,
this technology?
yes, we have a patent on the production process and the product itself. And we are quite confident in our ability to protect that. Of course, no patent is good for life, but I'm sure that with our advancements, which we already made over the last year, we will be very competitive over the next decade or decades.
Okay. So do you have an R&D team who's constantly
Yeah,
improving on the technology or expanding?
yeah, one of my co-founders is working on the machine together with his number two, so Georg and Philip are breathing and thinking and doing nothing else but thinking about the machine and how to improve it. And soon we will have the second machine arriving. So I'm quite happy about this, that we can double our production capacities so I can do some more sales as well.
So how are you educating then your clients on the benefits? Because you're selling the benefits.
Yeah.
Some may already know, be aware, some don't care about this whole sustainable thing. So how are you educating them? And other than, you're a likable guy, you can have good conversations, how are you able to get the product across?
Yeah, it's just they like to have a coffee with me and then sell it on the side. Now, jokes aside, we do invest a lot in certifications, which at the end of the day is something that their customers already demand of them. So especially in the German-speaking areas, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, styrofoam is not appreciated anymore, and for a good reason. And in that, we can say, okay, we are best in class in paper recycling. We are certified by the Fraunhofer Institute of Performance. We are, and so on and so forth. So this is all the things that we do. We do external validation in order to not have an empty promise. We're also climate neutral certified. There's now big discussions about climate neutral and can you be climate neutral? Of course, you cannot be climate neutral as a company. Of course, we're doing offsetting. But if you look at the CO2 emissions of one packaging of styrofoam and ours, we are at 1 and styrofoam is at 40 when you come at the comparative level. And we wanted to have this certified. And in the process, I also said, no, I also want to be climate neutral certified, which is in the news and rightfully so for a lot of greenwashing. But if I can do something good, then this is also part of our mission. And I could also say, oh, we're just doing an okay product, but I don't do this certification. Then we also cannot learn from it because we do this certification every year. So we see, okay, where can we still emit less CO2 or have less impact on the environment? And everything is looked through, like all of my, sitting in the car now, the list of all of my car records, the flights, which we really minimize. I'm taking the train as much as possible. Even with the car, when I go to Switzerland, I take the night train to Bregenz from the eastern part of Austria in order to
I was going to ask you this question.
To be less of that. So anybody who says, oh, we're a climate neutral product, no, there's no climate neutral product. There's products which are big emitters of CO2 and have a big climate impact, and they're as much climate neutral certified as we are. For us to have this process, a continuous learning, I wanted to have this in place because at the end of the day, I want our customers to have something in their hands if they need to show them exactly how we plan on reducing our emissions. And that's something which I also discussed a little bit with some other market players, but this is how I see we can be a trustful brand. Because if we don't have outside certifications, if we don't have outside examinations, if we don't have somebody else looking in, they have to trust my word. And I'm not the person, after having been in the diplomatic circles, a word is good, but it's not enough.
Question, how big of a market is this to the listeners? I mean, it's every product, right? Like you can be anywhere.
It's any product, yes, any temperature or shock sensitive product. So it can be what we did now is, for example, for some little engines or for some engineering parts. You've seen at the startup event as well, the one company that are doing electric charging stations for cars, right? They also have the trouble that they don't have good packaging for their wall boxes. So we're now working with them to find out, can we make a solution for you that you then also can send to your customers a high quality product, which they then might as well use in the summer if they need to store some goods. So it's in the car. So we're always thinking outside the box again, the pun not intended. And we're working on different applications quite a bit.
Because customization is costly also. So you need to always find the right balance for you, right?
Yeah, that's one of the advantages of our machine, is that we have a prototype machine where I can now tip in 3 things, and then it's a completely different size, different thickness, different thing.
Okay.
So we planned this production prototype machine to be able to do everything. Of course, the second machine is already specialized now, where we know, okay, we need it for this kind of products. But the first machine, which we have now, we can do anything that you can think of that needs packaging, except we're a little bit hindered in the entire size. So an entire big fridge we cannot do yet, but half a fridge we can do, for example. So that's our approach in that way.
2 halves is 1 fridge. Maybe you can do that. Or it doesn't
Yes,
matter.
absolutely. I just cut it in half, then that's good. The fridge.
Okay. And you mentioned your competition a lot.
Yes.
What are you doing that they're not doing? Or is it the technology, the experience, and all this?
I'm happy with every competitor that wants to get rid of styrofoam. And I told them, I'm happy that they're on the market. I'm happy that we can push our solutions, although we all have kind of different ones. If only, there's still 99.5% styrofoam being used in the world. If you just would add 2% of all of that and divide it between all of us, we would all be like, oh, we don't have the production capacities. So I want all of them to grow. I want all of them to do well. And I want all of them to also be present on the market. You will never hear from us, and they do it sometimes, unfortunately, that, oh, they're doing this wrong or they're claiming this, but this is not right. I always say there's good products on the market. Whether you like ours better than theirs is up to you. We, of course, believe that it's better than the other ones for A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But I'm not talking bad about any competitors because we have a common goal, and that's making the shipment of temperature and shock sensitive goods a better place for the environment. And that's, in the end of the day, what I also strive for. So I'm not part of any smear campaigns or now saying, okay, they do this, they do that. That's not who I believe in. I believe that if we all can pull together and we all have, the market is growing, the requirements for the larger companies to be more ecologically thinking is growing. If you think about the European Green Deal and all the climate neutral Europe 2050 and all that kind of things, 2035 they say, but okay, I believe it when I see it. But that's also something that we really strive for.
I have an idea for you though. You mentioned Elon Musk before, and Elon Musk opened up his patents to everyone. So maybe you can do that.
Absolutely. And the problem is the patent would not even help 99% of the people, because our technology, how we do it, if you don't know the material, it wouldn't work. So that's why we want to go into this machine as a service model, is because we know some competitors are doing something similar, but they're not able to do it as well as we do. And in that sense, we believe that this machine model would then be more beneficial than opening up a patent, because if you're not a material scientist like my co-founder is, and you don't have 20 years of experience in this material, even opening the patent doesn't help you. But of course, there are some large players in the world, like some big packaging producers. If they really want to do it like we do, we need this patent for. So we're not against, the small people using it. We're more like aware that there's some large corporations that jump on opportunities sometimes, and that's why we needed it.
I think I'm going to wrap up here because I think we're running out of time, but I think I'll invite everyone to check your website and what you guys do. I've seen a sample of the product, I think, when we were in Italy, so in Milan. So the last question to you is, what's your approach with your gut feeling?
My gut feeling? It's a very good question. The gut to me is, if you think my wife is really into healthy food, gut health and all that kind of things. So we completely underestimate the power of our gut, both in the physical, emotional, and what it actually does for the body. So all the nerves that come together, all the different feelings that are caused through it. I'm not the expert in that, my wife is. But so for me, gut feeling is always good, as long as not an emotional driven gut feeling. So sometimes you're like in emotions and then you're like, oh, I think that's best. That's what you have to somehow wait out for a day. Like one of my first bosses say, if you're angry, write the emails, but only send it the next day because look over it in the morning. And that's kind of how I go with my gut feeling. So if I have a gut feeling and I'm very emotional about it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this way. And then it might be in conversations that I'm not the person that I want to be, but, had to come out sometimes. But important is that the second day, if the gut feeling is still the same, then go for it.
Thank you so much. I don't know if there's anything you would like to add, but I enjoyed it. And I'm sure the
Absolutely.
listeners will as well.
I think it was my favorite podcast I've ever done. So thank you so much for that. And I don't say this. You can go to all my podcasts, which I've done. And I've never said this before. So not that you think that I'm just a politician saying that. So I really thank you for those
Thank
questions
you so much.
and making me rethink a lot of things. That's pretty cool. Really appreciate it.
Cool. No, thank you so much, and really appreciated you doing it in between two meetings. So I'm gonna let you run to your meeting actually now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've derived value from the show, you can subscribe on platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your feedback is incredibly important to us, so please consider rating the show or leaving a review. It's a fantastic way to help other podcast explorers discover our content. To gain more insights, visit our website at gguttt.com. This is gguttt.com, and see you next time.